No,
time?
no, no.
One.
Very good. No.
Hi again. So here I am, Deepak. After I just told you I'm going to do only one or two live videos, I am already breaking my pledge because I am compelled to share with you some very interesting material, and the opportunity was only today. So I thought I should share this fascinating material with you. So over the years, as you know, I've talked about Vedanta, I've talked about Kashmir Shaivism, I've talked about the other non-dual traditions, and today I have the distinct pleasure of having in my office right here in Chopra Center, that's what you're seeing. This is my office at the Chopra Center, and you've seen me here before, but I have the opportunity to welcome Lorin Roche. Lorin, welcome. Please say hi to everyone. And Lorin is the author of this amazing book. It's called the Radiance Sutras, 112 Gateways to the Yoga of Wonder and Delight. And there's a small version of it which is called the Sutra Jam Session, Sutra Jam Selection, the Radiance Sutras. Okay, so a lot of you probably don't even know the meaning of the word sutra. So once before, I think I may have mentioned to you, the word sutra is related to the English word suture, or the Latin word sutre. It means a thread. So a sutra is a short thread in consciousness that gives you a shift in experience. That's the way I've understood it. Maybe you can correct me. But the entire Vedic literature, including Bhagavad Gita and many of the Vedic scriptures, are in the form of sutras. And that's how they bring about shifts in consciousness. Lorin is an expert in what are known the Tantra Yoga teachings. So enough of an introduction to both Lorin and the book, the Radiant Sutras, 112 Gateways to the Yoga of Wonder and Delight. So, Lorin, first of all, please tell me how you got started in your own life into this whole amazing field of understanding reality or awakening to reality.
Well, I was a really anxious, hardworking college student up the coast at University of California at Irvine when it was new. It was only a couple of years old. And
so this was many...
In 1968.
Okay, so many revolutions and rotations of the sun ago.
So I was working my way through college, and I was the greenskeeper. I worked for the greenskeeper at Irvine Coast Country Club. And that means that you groom the greens every morning before first light, because the golfers come out as soon as there's light to see by. So at 4:30 in the morning, I'd be out there grooming with these machines, grooming I would do 9 holes, another guy would do 9 holes. So that was my job. And then I was going to school. I was a freshman. And UC Irvine was new. There was only a couple thousand students, and so the researchers were desperate for subjects. So they made it a law, they made it a rule that the students had to participate in experiments every quarter. So one day a graduate student comes in with a clipboard and he's signing people up for brainwave experiments. And I thought, that sounds really interesting. So I signed up. And I go to the lab, and it's a room inside of a room inside of a room. There's a Faraday cage with an EEG machine inside of another room that's an isolation chamber with completely silent, pitch black. And I thought I was going to get brainwave biofeedback. But instead, I was a control subject. So they wired me up, and they left me there. They said, "I'll be back in a while." They left me there for 3 hours in a pitch black, utter silence.
This is what year is this again?
1968.
Okay, I was in medical school, final year.
And so I had no instruction. I'd never heard of meditation, I don't think. And I was a loner surfer, so I wasn't aware of the whole psychedelic movement. And I was just sitting
Just
there.
to interrupt you, 1968,
Yeah.
my Professor Anand, professor of physiology, was totally into the neurobiology of meditation. And furthermore, not only was I a student, I was experimenting with LSD. Now go ahead.
Yeah, well, I missed that whole side of things. So here I was, like a know-nothing, ignoramus 18-year-old, and I'm there in the pitch black with no instructions, never having heard of meditation. But it was kind of fun. Like, there's nothing to do. I'm not supposed to move because I'm wired up to the machine. So after about half an hour, and there wasn't even a pinpoint of light. It was totally silent. After about half an hour, I just melted. Just mind dissolved into the space, and being
Ocean of
an
consciousness.
ocean. It was like being a surfer. I knew that state where you dissolve into the ocean. You're at one. So I just melted, and I was somehow a point of light in something very, very vast and friendly. And hours went by. The researcher came back, and I said, "You better give me a while to like find my body." And when I walked out of the lab after 3.5 hours, I was in this luminous state that I had never experienced or heard of, where the living things were aglow. And my body felt like it was the center of a field. My body just felt like sunlight particles, vibrating particles in the middle of a big field. And there's just, I had never heard of it. It was, and the world was stunningly beautiful. Like the aesthetic pleasure, everything looked like the most magnificent work of art. And it was a California afternoon, like these amazing...
But I've been doing meditation now for 45 years, or 40 years at least, and teaching as well. And there are three kinds of responses I get. The first is, what's all the fuss about? When can I stop doing this? The second is, it made me relax. And then third is this luminous ecstasy that you're describing about, which happens to a few people, not everyone. But it seems karmically that it happened to you for the first time you tried it.
Yeah. In retrospect, it was a perfect situation because I had no instructions that would be wrong for my type. There was nothing to get in the way. And miraculously, they needed me to come back every day for the better part of a month. And so every afternoon I would go and be there for hours in the pitch black. And I got used to functioning in this state. And I was taking calculus, and I would have to write a typical college. I had research methodology, calculus, had to write things. And my mind was so clear that I could take a calculus test or whatever it was, and I would be taking the test, and unlike any time in my life, because I used to get nervous on tests, I would be there with the problem, and in my mind's eye, I could look at the textbook and remember the formula and just derive it on the spot. So I love this. This is so, being able to function, like my brain is actually functioning properly. This is great. And then the experiment ended, and this state of it was a relaxation so total that there wasn't any fear. There wasn't a molecule of fear anywhere in my body. So it stayed for about a month or two. And then I remember saying to a friend, oh my God, I'm drying up. This state, it's fading away because I'm not maintaining it. I didn't know anything. And so then I got desperate and I started reading. I went to the library and I was looking through these, whatever books on yoga were available in 1968. And I was reading these thick books about mysticism. And so I thought, well, I'll go to work in the lab. So I went to work in the lab to be close to all this experimentation. And one day, in a meeting of lab assistants, this woman came in and she opened this little book. It was Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And in the back of the book is a short 14-page, really brief, for the first translation from Sanskrit of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And she read a couple of lines.
Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, yeah.
She read a couple of lines, and I was utterly in love. It was just love at first hearing. I knew that whoever composed that knew intimately the experience of that luminous awareness. It was speaking from there. And I jumped in my Volkswagen Bug and drove down to the bookstore and found a copy. And that became my guide and my Bible.
But now I've read the book, most of it, but I come back to it. Here's a couple of stanzas. Love is particular when you love someone, a tangible, touchable someone. The whole world opens up. If you want to know the universe, dare to love one person. All the secret teachings are right here. Go deeper and deeper still. The gift of concentration is the spaciousness that surrounds it. Focus illuminates immensity. So this is your translation from the original Sanskrit.
Yeah.
When did you start to read Sanskrit?
Well, I was trained as a TM teacher in 1970, and so we had to learn quite a bit. And we got into the practice where you take a word and you meditate with it and you go deeper through the levels, and then you take a phrase and do japa with it. You let it pulsate in you, and then you go deeper through all the layers of meaning. So that made me feel like intimate with Sanskrit in terms of its mantric quality. It's something that, like music, that you feel and it speaks to you.
I believe in English grammar that's called onomatopoeia, where the sound echoes the sense.
Yeah.
So the English poets like Tennyson, dry clashed his harness in the icy caves, and the bare black cliff clanged round him as his feet slipped on juts of slippery crag. And I was moved by that, but this kind of onomatopoeia is unheard of, the Sanskrit, where the sound echoes the sense and actually shifts your perception.
Yeah, there's whoever constructed Sanskrit, however it came to be, it has an evocative power that people can feel in their bodies. It's and it never is. It's inexhaustible. It never ceases to astonish me. What's in the Sanskrit, the richness, and it's there in the sound of the language, and it's also there in the complexity of meaning, where each word has so many different meanings. So you were reading 99. So what I did, just went through and looked at the images inside of each word. Like the first word, it's becoming light.
Vastu.
Dawning, morning. That's from the Veda, Rig Veda.
That's the meaning of Vastu.
Yeah, the seat or place of anything. Any real existing or abiding substance or essence. In other words, not something abstract. Like, I love God as a space, or as nothingness. This is a particular. In other words, the word is saying a particular thing, manifestation, and then a midst between. So I just went through the images in each word. So I don't call it a translation, but rather a version, where I'm letting the imagery that's inside the Sanskrit come out to play.
It's beautifully done, because I'm seeing how you did your work and how you actually ended up with this product, or product is hardly a good word, but ended up with this exposition. And 99, you say, perceive one, meditate on the void, rest in tranquility.
Yeah, prasamyati, which is the dissolving into peace. So the I'd been teaching transcendental meditation, and then around 1975, the TM movement became so officious and bureaucratized.
Yeah, my experience too.
Yeah,
But that's all right. We
yeah,
got a lot
so
out of it.
That's,
I got a lot out of it.
Oh, it's incredible.
And I had a very intimate relationship with Maharishi,
Yeah.
for which I'm grateful. You know, always will be.
It's an incredibly brilliant practice. And then around 75, I branched out and was developing custom meditation practices for each person, based on asking them questions about their own natural doorways into aesthetic experience. And when I got a PhD at the University of California in meditation research,
Wow.
where I was just focusing on the subjective experience of meditation. I did thousands of open-ended interviews with meditators of all kinds, just asking them, well, what do you experience during meditation? We would meditate for a while, and then I would just make notes, like Zen, Christians, Buddhists, Vipassana people, TM people, Sikhs, all kinds of meditators. Just what do you experience during meditation, and just making notes. And when I finished the PhD, it's like I had this feeling like the text was asking me, hey, Lorin, why don't you do a fresh version? And I, of course, said no. Like, me, like, aren't there thousands of people more qualified? Well, just come on. And so I was at Esalen, and I started working on my first version of this in like 1987. I was sitting at the lodge in Esalen in the
I've
morning.
been there many times.
Yes.
Yeah. Met Saran there.
I'm alone in the lodge at 7 in the morning with the text, different translations of the Bhairava Tantra and a journal. And I'm starting to work on how would you say this in English, where the English resonates in some way like the Sanskrit does. Because there's lots of dry, arid translation. How would you let it have some juice and some impact? So I'm sitting there alone in the lodge at Esalen, and I'm working away, and then these two people come and sit next to me. One guy sits right there, and another guy sits across from me. I look up, and they're monks, dressed in robes, smelling of wonderful herbs like frankincense or whatever they. And it's Father Matus and Brother David.
Oh my God.
And they just come from doing their mass, and they were visiting scholars for a month. And out of the whole lot, they came and sat next to me, and Father Matus leans over and he looks and goes, he says, hi, I'm Father Matus, and what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm beginning to make a new version of the Bhairava Tantra. And he goes, oh, I wrote a paper about that. Just like that. He says, I feel like it inspired the Desert Fathers, that has inspired the Christian monastic tradition. So there's all these miracles like that that's saying.
Let me read one more for all of you. Wherever your heart journeys, on whatever expedition, in your outer life and secret inner realms, breathe in intimacy with infinity. Where can you go to avoid the one in whom all exists? Reach down into your deepest being, take a stand in eternity. Walk through this world, see every situation as an expansion of the mystery. Savor the tremble of recognition. The God in you is touching the God out there. It's brilliant. So now tell, we have a short time left. just tell everyone, what is the Bhairava Tantra?
Well, this text appeared, what we know or assume is that it showed up in Kashmir around 800 AD. Now, that's where it appeared as a text. Now, before that, it may have been in the oral tradition for hundreds of years, or it was secret, and it was chanted. And it comes clearly from a culture where the composers were intimately familiar with the entire literature of India and using words with a superb level of skill. Like even after 30 years, just listening to the Sanskrit and looking up each word and how it's used in the literature, I'm still stunned at the precision with which they used language. So this came...
I think that's the true logos, right? The word that becomes the flesh and the experience.
So then Kashmir has had a long, troubled history the last 1,200 years. But the Buddhists took these texts to Nepal and Tibet. They loved the Tantras. And there's this man, Lakshman Ju, that was a custodian.
I met Lakshman Ju once.
Yeah.
With Maharishi.
Yes. So he was a part of this transmission.
Bhairava, correct me if
Yes.
I'm wrong, means terror.
Terror.
So, Bhairava is one of the forms of Lord Shiva that terrorizes you, and Bhairavi is
The goddess.
the goddess also of terror. Yeah?
Yes.
Right? So here, you see terror and yet ecstasy, how they go together. I think my understanding is that when one is faced with the ultimate terror of non-existence, it can actually throw you into an awakening,
Yes.
into reality.
It feels terrifying. Jumping, dissolving into the unknown, having an orgasm, falling in love, getting married, having kids, having your kids leave home, not having kids, going and joining a monastery, going and isolating yourself in a cave, going surfing. It's all, anything great is terrifying.
And then death.
And then death.
And then birth.
And then birth. And the first time you walk out onto a dance floor, the first time, say, that, like at Burning Man, you make up these wild costumes. The first time you strip naked except for some costume and walk out, that must be terrifying.
The first
Surfing.
time you took LSD.
Yeah,
Right.
surfing.
LSD.
Surfing is terrifying.
Yeah.
Paddling out at dawn over
So-
the sharks.
Terror is the key to freedom, right? You are filled with the terror of non-being, and it throws you into being. That's the ultimate paradox,
That is.
right? And that's the gift of Shiva.
Yeah, so it's terror and delight and wonder and astonishment. It's being willing to be amazed by the everyday. A lot of what this text is about is perceiving what it means just to be in a body and to breathe and being, oh my God, how does it, I just have a thought and I move and breath flows. How does this is incredible. That's a lot of what the feeling of this text is. Being in delight at just the littlest teeny things, like a little teeny touch, being amazed. How could that happen?
Yeah, it's all totally bewildering, astonishing,
It's totally bewildering.
inexplicable.
Inexplicable.
The fact that we now have science tries to explain everything, it's a silly word. There's no explanation for anything. It's all maybe some little description of a minute fraction of experience that we call an explanation, but to have a thought is bewildering. Rumi has one line somewhere where he says, exchange your cleverness for bewilderment. And I've always felt bewilderment, astonishment, terror, wonder, curiosity, insight, intuition, imagination, humility, reverence for existence, and not knowing are the real spiritual experiences. It's not about, some kind of daily ritual or practice. If you're not, what Rumi says, if you're not naked by now, go back to sleep. So that nakedness is the utter letting go of every human construct that has been recycled through the ages. And that's the gift that the Bhairava Sutra and your translation brings about. Now you have a small translation here called Sutra Jam Selection. What's the jam selection?
Well, what happened, it used to be like after maybe 10 or 15 years, because I do all the work at 4 in the morning till about 8. I get up and I'll chant the Sanskrit and start rocking out to it because it's so powerful and juicy. And then after a couple hours, it takes me over. And then I'll go, how would you say something like that in English? So I'll be writing. Well, after 10 years of this, like every day at 4 in the morning, it felt like there was a band of invisible musicians playing, where the atmosphere would like warm up, and there's this feeling of passion in the air. So now it's like 5 in the morning.
And you're all by yourself?
I'm all by myself. My wife's in the next room asleep, like a sane person should sleep in until 8. And after several years of this, and it's really like the spirits are giving me encouragement, entertaining me while I go, musicians picked up on it that there was like bootleg versions floating around the world. And musicians started taking it and rocking out to it at yoga festivals and sometimes in bars in Crete where there'd be a yoga retreat somewhere and all the yogis would go to a bar and with the kirtan musicians and they start rocking out to the sutras maybe 10 years ago, and then they would come back and tell me, like when we had an awesome time in Hawaii or Crete or Bali or somewhere. And so they asked for a little version. This is the musicians' favorites. And then I started to understand that the text, it wants to be on the lips. It wants to be embodied. It wants to come out and play. It wants regular people.
The word wants to become the flesh.
Yeah.
Yes. So, there's a quote from Nietzsche, I believe. He says, those seen dancing were thought to be mad by those who could not hear the music.
Yeah.
So it's only these sages and few psychotics and geniuses that can tap into that. But your work has kind of tapped into that. So that we can all hear the music.
Mm-hmm.
The music of the spheres, the music of the infinite being.
And regular people, ordinary people, know these techniques. There's nobody that knows more about attachment and detachment and the terror of letting go of someone that you adore than a woman who just has nurtured a baby and now they're 5 years old and they're going off to kindergarten for the first time. They know more than anyone on earth that heartache, the miracle of love and letting go, don't they? And when someone like that acts, when they read one of these verses, everybody's hair stands on end because we're hearing it live. That the teaching is coming through. That woman is embodying the goddess.
So are you open to doing jamming together with me sometime for the public?
Oh yeah,
live, with music and
let's do it.
The bells and whistles to go with it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do it then. In the meanwhile, get one of these books if you can, and even the Radiance Sutras, the Sutra Jam Selection. I'll end with one more reading for all of you. People talk about mind and ego. Let's just drop this whole conversation. Consider instead there is no mind. There is no ego. There is only the vivid reality of this surprising moment at play and beckoning. There is only the vivid reality of this surprising moment, because what we call vivid reality lasts only a moment. Look around you right now, and that experience is gone as soon as you have it. The rest, that which we call the past, that which we call the future, is also moments, but they're not vivid. And this moment, even though it's vivid, is ungraspable, because as soon as you catch it, it's gone. So thanks, Lorin, very much for joining me, and this has been an amazing conversation.
And remember, have fun. If you're going to meditate, have fun with it, play.